Good afternoon and welcome to the online roundtable about the future of hearing systems with Bluetooth LE audio on the occasion of the World Hearing Day. My name is Samuel Gunner and I'm working here at Fink und Fuchs in the account team for the Federal Association of the Hearing Aid Industry, and we are coordinating the German campaign of the World Hearing Day. And I'm very happy that the Bluetooth Special Interest Group supports this campaign this year as a partner, as they share many of the goals of the hearing aid industry and the World Health Organization, who are who implemented the campaign in the first place. As we will hear from the experts of the Bluetooth Special Interest Group and the hearing aid industry, LE audio offers the potential to fully integrate people with hearing loss into public life. And in this respect, we are very pleased that the Bluetooth SIG is here with us. The announcement of Bluetooth LE audio has generated a strong resonance in the media, especially here in Germany, but the story can't stop with the announcement of the new technology. That's why we are now focusing more on the concrete benefits LE audio will bring to people with hearing aids and what it will mean for their everyday life. Before we start, I would like to share with you some organizational information. To ensure good sound quality, please mute your phones or your microphones and ask your questions during the Q&A via chat. I will then pass them on to the speakers. We hope for your understanding if we are not able to discuss all questions due to the limited time we have. We will prepare a Q&A document afterwards, which we will share with all the participants and in which all questions will be answered in detail. We will also provide you with the recording and the presentation. In order not to waste too many words, I am happy to introduce the speakers of today and then hand over the floor to them. First of all, we have Dr. Stefan Zimmer on the line, Chairman of the Federal Association of the Hearing Aid Industry and General Secretary of the European Hearing Instrument Manufacturers Association, EHIMA. He will start with introducing the World Hearing Day and the challenges of hearing impaired people in daily life. After that, Ken Kolderup, Vice President of Marketing of the Bluetooth SIG, will then present the new features of Bluetooth LE audio with a comparison of the codec. So he will tell us in detail what is new about LE audio compared to Bluetooth Audio Classic. He will present the multi-stream and broadcast functionality of LE audio and some use cases for hearing aid users. Möhring, Chairman of the EHIMA Technical Committee and Vice President of Research and Development of Demant, concludes the presentation with the perspective of the hearing aid industry, explaining the technical requirements for implementing applications with LE audio for hearing aid users. So, not to waste too many words, I would now like to hand over the floor to Stefan Zimmer, who will begin with introducing you the World Hearing Day and the German campaign.
Yes, thank you very much, Samuel. I hope you can all hear me. Very warm welcome from my side. And my job is basically to set the stage for what is of core interest to you all, which is what Ken and Finn have to share with you, going into detail about the benefits of BTLE audio for hearing impaired people. Now, why do we have this conference today? Well, because tomorrow the eyes of the world are on the ears, which means that tomorrow we celebrate World Hearing Day. World Hearing Day is an initiative by the World Health Organization, and we as the German Association of Hearing Aid Manufacturers, we are in our 10th year of setting up a special event on that day. So it's a great coincidence for us that this coincides together with the news by BTLE. Now, why is it so important to have a World Hearing Day in the first place? The ears are the gateways of people to one another. And it is very important to have the hearing checked regularly because there's much at risk if people don't. And as we like to say, it's about much more than hearing. And Samuel, if you can go back to the first slide on World Hearing Day, it's not only about hearing. It would be trivial to bother you with details about how important it is to have your hearing checked and to have your hearing serviced and to have a hearing aid if you have a hearing impairment, if you don't hear well. This is self-evident. But what's so important is that whereas many people tend to see a restored sense of hearing as a commodity, as something of almost a luxurious quality, it is more key than that. Early intervention are crucial in order to minimize the risk of certain diseases and illnesses, which can go hand in hand with untreated hearing loss. And this is why we, as a German association, together with the German ENT Doctors Federation, call for statutory free of charge hearing tests for people of age 50 and older, which should be covered by the public health insurances. Why is that? Now, again, it is about way more than hearing. Hearing loss, for instance, just to give you a few quick facts, is the highest modifiable risk factor for dementia. If you don't have your hearing restored, and if you're hard of hearing, and you don't wear hearing aids, then the risk to develop dementia is about 21% higher than that of people with either hearing aids or with normal sense of hearing. The risk of becoming dependent in old age is about 28% higher for people with hearing loss and untreated hearing loss. And especially men are at a higher risk of developing depression. Depression symptoms, 43% is their risk higher than that of normal people with normal hearing of becoming depressive and developing depressive symptoms. These are just some 3 quick numbers and data from a French longitudinal study by Hélène Amieva from the year 2018. You can find more data, by the way, on hearing and the relevance of restored hearing for the overall health of people on our company site, ehima.com, EHIMA.com, or on our public awareness raising platform, hearit.org. This is hear-it.org. And you find especially data from surveys that we are running in now 15 countries. These are called track surveys, Eurotrack surveys, and we surveyed close to 500,000 people. And we derived a lot of data on the relevance of hearing and restored hearing from that. But let me tell you one thing. While on the one hand, speaking on behalf of the hearing aid industry, which means the manufacturers of hearing aids, when we talk about treating hearing loss, this is not just done by producing a high quality hearing instrument and selling it to people, making them wear it. The key element in order to make it a success story is, of course, the professional fitting. And in Germany, we have about 15,000 highly qualified audiologists, Hörgeräte-Hörakustiker, in about 6,700 stores. So you basically find a highly trained professional around almost every corner in any city in Germany. And these are the people allowing people hard of hearing to regain their sense of hearing, to regain a high quality of life, together with the highly developed instruments that our members produce. Now, to the next slide, World Hearing Day in Germany. As I said, it's the 10th anniversary for our activities. You find more on the scope of our activities on our site www.welttagdeshörens.de. This is Welttag-des-Hoerens.de. We have about, well, it's even more than 3,500 partners among the German audiologists who provide free of charge hearing tests tomorrow and the days around World Hearing Day. We have highlight activities in several cities tomorrow, among them in Mainz, Frankfurt, Regensburg, Hanover, Wuppertal, Weimar, Offenbach, Hagen, Bochum, and many more. We have partner associations in the German-speaking areas around Germany, which is Switzerland and Austria, and even South Tyrol in Italy. They're joining us to make this a really unique event, because it's very important to highlight the importance of hearing together with WHO on a global level and locally and regionally. Now, when I said it is about more than hearing, Samuel, would you go to the next slide? Let me give you some background data also about the benefits of untreated hearing loss, meaning when people actually acquire hearing aids and have them professionally fitted. What are they saying then? I briefly mentioned the survey, the so-called Eurotrack surveys, running in 15 countries now, serving about 500,000 people by now. It's very important to know that basically everyone who is fitted with hearing aids is very satisfied with them. We get a feedback response rate of 97% of people surveyed saying that once I acquired hearing aids, they improved my quality of life. About 95% say they're highly useful on the job. And one number that we're always almost smirking about is 2/3 of the people eventually fitted with hearing aids, most of them too late, because people tend to wait too long because they say, well, I have bigger fish to fry, more important things to run than taking care of my hearing, because they are unaware of the connects of untreated hearing loss and health risks such as dementia, depression, and so on. And 2/3 of them said, had I known how well hearing aids professionally fitted work and how much they improve my quality of life, I would have gotten them earlier. 2/3 of the people surveyed said, had I known how well they work, I would have not waited that long. And well, that said something about the quality of the product and of the fitting process. By the way, there are certain other things that are enhanced when you have hearing aids. Many people that we survey say that they sleep much better now that they have hearing aids. They're less fatigued in the evening after coming back from work or from any other activity. The performance of work is higher. They have less stress symptoms. So again, it's about way more than hearing. Now, the next slide illustrates a bit about the socio-economic impact of hearing loss, or rather say untreated hearing loss. It's interesting to note that about 1 in 10 people in the European Union state a hearing loss. They self-assess a hearing loss. They say, in some way, my hearing isn't working well. I think I do have a hearing loss. And in Germany, if you break it down, in Germany, it's about 12%. Let's say these are 10 million people, but only 1 in 3 of these hard of hearing people use actually hearing instruments. Now, you may wonder, why is that? If they work so well, as I just said, if people are so happy with them, why is it that so few actually get going, knock on an audiologist's door and say, please get me some hearing aids? Now, there are several reasons for that. And one is that not everyone who considers or who thinks he has a hearing loss actually goes to see an ENT doctor. Only 82% of people stating a hearing loss actually go and see an ENT doctor, and only 55% get a prescription, get a recommendation for hearing aids. And then, and that's a very crucial number, we have a dropout rate of 1/3. That means 1/3 of these people do not eventually go to see an audiologist and do not get hearing aids. So if we estimate that about 10 million people in Germany say, well, I would probably need hearing aids, at least I think I have a hearing loss, only 3.7 million actually are wearing hearing aids today. So this shows us how important it is to raise more awareness and to highlight the benefits of hearing aids, and also to highlight the risk that people run into if they do not get their hearing loss treated. And on a larger scale, back from the individual scope, there are certain costs connected with untreated hearing loss. And according to a British study of 2019 by Professor Bridget Shield, you can download the study at EHIMA.com. By the way, the entire study, if you're really interested in it. According to this study, the costs, direct and indirect costs connected with untreated hearing loss in the European Union are about 185 billion euro per year. These are 55 billion euros due to a loss of productivity of people hard of hearing who are not wearing hearing aids, and 130 billion euro due to lost quality of life. And in Germany alone, the size of the costs connected with untreated hearing loss is 39 billion euros, which means that each person hard of hearing but not treating their hearing loss is costing about 10,300 euro per year. So it would be more effective, also cheaper on the economy, if everyone who has a hearing loss and who has a recommendation by the ENT doctor that hearing aids would be the right treatment would actually go and get them. Now, as I said, this is just to set the stage. More resources you find at hear-it.org or at ehima.com, or for those German speakers among you, Hörgeräte.de is the communication site of the German Industry Association. It's ihr-hörgerät.de. Now, again, I briefly mentioned the number that 97% are highly happy with the hearing aids, and 2/3 say, had I known how well they work, I would have gotten them earlier. And one major argument for them to say that is that modern hearing aids make it much easier to go through daily life, whether it's your job or private life. And it's the comfort, it's the ease, and also major aspect is the connectivity. You can connect wireless to technical gadgets around you, and with the new Bluetooth LE audio standard, this connectivity will even enhance, will even be better, it will be more comfortable, of a higher quality, and so we expect that in the future more than 2/3 of those wearing hearing aids will say, had I known, I would have gotten them earlier. And so I want to pass on back to you, Samuel, and then to Ken to tell us why that could be and what the benefits of connectivity are in the future for people using hearing aids. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefan. And I think we can.
Yeah, hello. All right, hopefully the audio is working well.
Very well.
So, so this is Ken Kolderup from the Bluetooth SIG, and I head up the marketing activities for Bluetooth. And the theme this year for World Hearing Day, Don't Let Your Hearing Loss Limit You, is something that we're very excited about for a number of reasons. And one of them is it's very directly related to the kind of discussion that we want to have right now. And this is actually a discussion that was enabled by a collaboration between the hearing aid industry and the Bluetooth Special Interest Group that started a number of years ago, and with a goal of exactly meeting that objective of not letting hearing loss limit you, and helping people with hearing loss to really realize their full potential. So I'd like to start off with a little bit of background on that. So if you go ahead and to next slide. So many of you are familiar with Bluetooth for its use in a lot of audio products today. The technology is now, we've celebrated our 20th anniversary, so we're over 20 years old now, and Bluetooth is being used in many, many areas beyond audio now. It's being used for a lot of connected devices in health and wellness and sports and fitness. It's being used to power a lot of location services like indoor navigation and asset tracking and item finding. It's even powering larger scale device networks in smart buildings like wireless lighting control systems. But audio is still the largest solution area for Bluetooth, and it's believed that about 1 billion Bluetooth audio products shipped just last year alone. So the market is very large, and it's also been growing at a very healthy rate, and it's expected to keep growing at a very healthy rate for the foreseeable future. Now, if you go to the next slide. Now, one of the reasons for that growth has really been 20 years of innovation in wireless audio coming from the Bluetooth developer community. And that innovation has been along a number of different dimensions. One of them is just the use cases that have been enabled by Bluetooth audio. For instance, starting out with hands-free calling that has helped make us safer and more productive. Adding stereo support for a wireless listening experience. It's really helped almost change our relationship with music over the last decade. Adding in synchronization with video for wireless watching, and then of course, more recently supporting the rise of the voice assistants like Alexa and Siri and Google Assistant and others. Also, innovation along the product side. If you just look at kind of what we call the audio sync devices, the audio peripheral devices. Starting out with relatively simple headsets, moving on to headphones of all kinds, whether they're over-ear or on-ear or in-ear. All kinds of speakers, whether they're portable speakers or home speakers or now smart speakers. and more recently the rise of truly wireless earbuds, and also even hearing aids to a limited degree as well. So a lot of innovation in use cases, a lot of innovation in syncs. But so this is interesting. So why are we here today? Well, here's where the challenge is. If you go to the next slide, it turns out that over the last few years, the developer community has really stretched the audio aspects of the Bluetooth standard to its limits and beyond its limits. And what the developers have had to do is really add proprietary extensions to Bluetooth technology in order to do these new advanced use cases like voice control, like truly wireless earbuds, and even hearing aids. So they've really had to add extensions in order to deliver compelling experiences in these products and use cases. So if you go to the next slide, so for instance, there are Bluetooth hearing aids today. They do exist, but they're all based on proprietary extensions. And the primary reason here is that hearing aids are very power-constrained devices. They're very small devices that need to live for many years, for many days, being worn for most of the day. So very tight requirements when it comes to power usage. And the current Bluetooth audio standard really is not sufficient for that. It still consumes too much power despite how low energy it is. To deal with that, there are companies like Apple and Google that have done some proprietary extensions to Bluetooth to allow for Bluetooth hearing aids to be developed. But as a result, since they're proprietary, it's relatively limited availability, as well as really limited interoperability with the handsets out there. They don't work with all handsets. They only work with a relatively select few. So it's this reason a few years ago that the hearing aid industry approached the Bluetooth SIG and said, hey, why don't we work together and try and figure out how we can add and enhance Bluetooth technology in order to address this issue. And that effort, which started off a number of years ago, really evolved and escalated over the last few years, and it ultimately resulted in the Bluetooth SIG defining an entire new architecture for supporting audio on top of the Bluetooth radio. And so we had the opportunity back in January, just a little over a month ago, to introduce to the world the results of this collaboration and this effort. And that's what resulted, if you go to the next slide, in our introduction of LE audio, which we refer to as the next generation of Bluetooth audio. So I think you can advance one more slide. So one point I wanted to make up front is with the introduction of LE audio, now Bluetooth audio itself will have two modes of operation. The mode that most of us are very, very familiar with today is how handsets talk to headphones and everything else, which we will now be calling classic audio. And there's this new mode that we've just announced, which we call LE audio. As the name suggests, if you're familiar with Bluetooth radios, there are actually two versions of Bluetooth radio. And classic audio, it works on the original Bluetooth classic radio. And LE audio, as the name suggests, works on the newer Bluetooth low energy or LE radio. So that's one of the primary differences between the two modes of operation. Now, if you go to the next slide, LE audio is, as we call it, the next generation of Bluetooth audio. And it was developed and created in a way that will enable the developer community to continue to build the same types of products and support the same types of use cases as classic audio, but it does introduce several new key features that will enable developers to improve the performance of those products and use cases that we know today, but also put in place new features that will enable them to create new types of products and deliver new types of use cases. And there's three features I wanted to talk about today because they really directly relate to this discussion around hearing aids. And the first of those is a brand new audio codec called LC3, which stands for Low Complexity Communications Codec, but we just refer to it as LC3. So if you advance to the next slide. So if you're not familiar with codecs in Bluetooth, there is a codec today that is supported and included as part of classic audio, and that's referred to as SBC, which stands for subband codec. And if you're not familiar with what codecs are responsible for in Bluetooth, what they do is they take uncompressed audio streams and compress them down to a much smaller bandwidth for transport over the Bluetooth air link, and then uncompress it for playback. on the audio sync device. So, and there's many ways to judge the performance of various audio codecs. Generally, it's looked at how aggressive a compression they're able to do, and then how good the audio quality is once it's uncompressed and played back out. And for SBC, it is a very good codec, and it's been serving the market for very well, and will continue to do so for some time. And if you take a high-quality audio stream, that generally relates to taking about a 1.5 megabit per second stream and compressing it down to something around 340 kilobits per second. And once it's uncompressed, still delivering a very good audio quality rating. Typically, audio quality ratings are done on a 5-point scale, with 5 being essentially perfect, 4 being excellent, 3 being good. And SBC audio is able to deliver very good audio quality, especially as you see here in this more high quality scenario. But if you advance to the next slide, with LE audio, we are taking the opportunity to introduce a modern, new, advanced codec called LC3. And like SBC, it's responsible for the same thing. But in this case, it can take a high-quality digital audio stream of about 1.5 megabits per second and compress it even farther, down to, in this case, about 190 kilobits per second. And then once it's uncompressed, play that audio back at even higher quality. So this is what's key about LC3. It can deliver higher quality audio at half the bit rate, which also translates to half the power. And that's what's so crucial for the hearing aid industry. So LC3 is one of the key features and reasons why LE Audio is now able to support and the development of a standardized way to include Bluetooth within hearing aids. So if you go to the next slide, so now, since with LE Audio, there's actually a standard way to support hearing aids and creation of standard Bluetooth hearing aids, we believe this should lead to much broader availability of these devices and a wider selection of styles, for instance. It should also provide better performance when it comes to the Bluetooth capabilities within those hearing aids. So as far as audio quality and latency and battery performance, but also, just as important, provide interoperability with the set of global handsets over time. And the key thing we want to make now is that if you think about it, there's a huge percent of the global population today that has been able to benefit from Bluetooth audio. What a lot of us take for granted with wireless calling and listening and watching and usage of voice assistants, the people with hearing loss have not really been able to take advantage of those and experience those benefits. Now with a standardized Bluetooth hearing aid, we can really bring all those Bluetooth audio benefits to people with hearing loss. So if you go to the next slide, so that's the first feature, LC3, which leads to much lower power consumption, which then leads for our ability to define a standard for Bluetooth hearing aids. The next feature I wanted to talk about is MultiStream audio. So you go ahead and advance. So to take one quick step back, if you look at the current Bluetooth audio, classic audio, it only supports a single audio stream. So a single audio source device, like a handset, can set up only a single stream to a single audio sync device like a headset. Now that's been serving the market very well for many years, but over these last few years, as you got to more advanced use cases like truly wireless earbuds, developers have had to get very creative with how they do this. And there's many ways they've done it, but for instance, what they'll do typically is they'll set up one audio stream between the handset and one earbud, and then they'll set up a second channel to forward on the necessary audio bits to the second device. So it works. It's very good products out there today doing methods like this, but it's not the most efficient. It's not the most efficient in power. It also can lead to some things like latency, which are not always beneficial. So with LE Audio, we have taken the opportunity to introduce multi-stream audio, so the ability for an audio source device, again like a handset, to set up multiple independent audio streams to individual sets of coordinated devices. So this can be used for many use cases. I won't go into all of them today, but one of the biggest benefactors right away are products like truly wireless earbuds. So go back for a second. Our truly wireless earbuds, so you can now have independent streams. This will lead to better latency, better power consumption, better performance. But not only truly wireless earbuds get to benefit from that, but also hearing aids as well. So if you go to the next slide, that's what that's referring to, is that With LC3, we're able to support standard Bluetooth hearing aids. With MultiStream audio, we can now also support binaural audio, which means being able to support stereo audio to people who wear 2 hearing aids. So another big important feature for the hearing aid industry. Now, the last feature I wanted to quickly cover is something called broadcast audio. So if you go to the next slide again, to take it again another step back, the current audio, there you stay there for a minute. So if the current version of Bluetooth Audio Classic supports not only a single audio stream, but only point-to-point topologies for communication. So you can only have one device talk to one other device, so a handset talking to or connecting to a headset. With LE Audio, we've lifted that restriction now, and if you go to the next slide, LE Audio not only supports point-to-point communications, but also supports broadcast audio and a one-to-many communications model. So now a single audio broadcasting device or single audio source device can broadcast an audio stream that can be picked up by an unlimited number of in-range Bluetooth sync devices or peripheral devices. So an unlimited number of endpoints that are within range of that broadcaster. Also supports built-in synchronization so that all of those audio devices are hearing the same thing at the exact same time. And the broadcast can be either open or closed. So if I'm going to share my audio experience, I can make it such that anyone around me is able to see that I'm broadcasting and tune in to hear that broadcast. Or they can be private, where I would require people to have a passcode, if you will, in order to decrypt and hear that audio stream. So why we're so excited about broadcast audio is it's opening up an entire new use case for Bluetooth called audio sharing, is what we refer to it as. And this is something we're very excited about. We believe it can really make a significant difference ultimately in how we engage with each other as well as the world around us. And there's 2 aspects to that I'd like to share. If you go to the next slide, the first is personal audio sharing. And this is where you or I or any of us can share our personal Bluetooth audio experience with people around us. So if I happen to be listening to music from my phone on my headset, I can now select to allow others around me to listen in as well, and we can have this shared listening experience. Or if I'm watching a video on my laptop or tablet or smartphone, I can let people with headphones around me also tune into the audio side and have a shared watching experience. So this is the personal side of audio sharing, and something we think that can lead to improving our engagement with people and around us, friends and family and so forth. Now the one that's even, and by the way, that includes now hearing aid users, so not just people with using traditional Bluetooth audio devices like headsets and headphones, but also hearing aids as well. Now the next slide gets into the other aspect of audio sharing called location audio sharing, and this is where public venues can share audio using Bluetooth audio sharing to augment the experience of visitors to that location. And we're excited to see a lot of innovation in this area over the coming years, but there are 3 quick applications I wanted to talk about. The first is public televisions. And what we mean by that are TVs that are installed in public venues. More and more public venues like airports or gymnasiums or waiting rooms or restaurants or bars are all installing televisions in these locations. And to a large degree, the audio is turned off on those televisions. Now imagine being able to walk into any of these venues and using a standard Bluetooth headphone, or now in the future a hearing aid, be able to scan for and connect and hear the audio associated with any of the televisions that are in that location. Also multi-language support, so imagine going to a conference that's supporting simultaneous interpretation services, and now being able to use your standard Bluetooth headphone, headset, or even now hearing aid, and being able to select and hear the audio in your language of choice. And the last application, and probably the one most relevant to the discussion today, is using location-based audio sharing from Bluetooth as a new next-generation assistive listening system. So if you go to the next slide, if you're not familiar with it, assistive listening systems have been around for a long time, and these are sound systems that are installed in public venues specifically to help people with hearing loss. You'll find them in a lot of locations, depending on the country, how prevalent they are. but they're in entertainment locations like cinemas and theaters. They're in lecture halls and meeting rooms. They're also in a lot of transportation environments like airports and stations and so forth. And there's a number of different technologies that have been used here over history. Today you'll find FM-based systems, IR-based systems, but probably most predominant you'll see are inductive loop systems, commonly referred to as hearing loop systems. And these are all wonderful technologies, and they've really been helping the hearing loss, people with hearing loss for quite some time. But these systems have been around for a number of decades, and they do have a number of challenges, some having to do with the cost of deployment and maintenance, the quality of the audio they're able to provide, some unfortunate effects, for instance, of signal spillover into adjacent venues, the lack of privacy, things like that. And so the nice thing is with Bluetooth-based audio sharing in this kind of location scenario can form now the basis for a true next-generation assistive listening system. So if you go to the next slide, so now you can, these various venues can install a Bluetooth audio broadcaster, which then can broadcast the audio that's coming from the PA system, if you will. And that can now be picked up with people with standard Bluetooth hearing aids. But it can go beyond hearing aids too. People with any standard Bluetooth headset would be able to tune in as well. So it provides a very interesting solution and approach to assistive listening. On a relative basis, this would be, it can be a significantly lower cost to deploy and maintain. It's able, as a modern digital audio system, able to deliver a significantly higher audio quality. It can avoid effects such as spillover into adjacent venues, and there's the ability to add privacy as well. So some nice benefits that come from it. So this is one of the things we're very excited about in the hearing industry as well, is the ability for Bluetooth LE audio and its broadcast audio and audio sharing capabilities to now form the basis for this next generation assistive listening. So if you go to the next slide, that's to really quickly summarize now. These are the three features we want to talk about of LE audio that are new, really new, and the effect that they have for the people with hearing loss in the hearing aid industry is now the ability to do standardized Bluetooth hearing aids, which will lead to hopefully greater availability and performance of those hearing aids, including support for binaural audio with 2 hearing aids. And now also broadcast capability, which would really hope accelerate the deployment and performance of public assistive listening systems. So the last comment I want to make on the next slide really had to do with just setting some expectations as far as market timing is concerned. We did just announce this and launch this back in January of this year. Generally, adoption of a new Bluetooth standard does take some time, and it goes through a very traditional kind of deployment model where first it's the enabling technologies such as chipsets and stacks and modules, these enabling products that adopt the new capabilities, and we're expecting to have that to happen during this first year, and we're already starting to see that to happen. Most of the major silicon providers that provide Bluetooth chips and stacks have already announced their support for this. And we do then expect to see that will filter into actual end products, whether they're the audio source devices or the audio sync devices, over the next year to two. And ultimately, this whole public use of it, where venues can start doing audio sharing, is something we would expect to see in this kind of 18 to 2 year to 3 year time frame. So something that's will not come immediately, but we do expect to happen in the relatively near horizon. So those are the concludes my comments that I wanted to make up front.
Thank you very much, Ken. I think these are very valuable insights. Once again, if you have any questions about the presentation, share your questions via chat. Before we answer the questions you sent me already, I will pass over to Finn Möhring from the EHIMA, and he will share with us the perspective of the hearing aid industry on LE audio.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So first of all, I'm just waiting for the slide to change. So there it was. So Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say that from representing the EHIMA, we are super excited to see that the specifications that we have been working with actually with the industry experts, as Ken was saying, since 2013 is now beginning to come to an end, and we start to see a situation where we can foresee products coming out here and supporting the standard. And that will be great for hearing aid companies, but it's in particular for hearing aid users, as we are now moving towards a standard and not having, you could say, solutions that are proprietary, but a standard that can sort of work ubiquitously across many different devices and business areas. The great thing about the Bluetooth LE standard, as was also covered by Ken, but I like to sort of emphasize it here, is that it is purpose-built for low-power devices. Hearing aids are per se very small, have very small batteries, and a key thing, going from the original, going from sync air, that is a power source that we know very well, into rechargeable hearing aids. It is of course super important that no matter what use cases you are having during the day, that you can actually provide a full hearing day with your hearing device, that you don't have to charge it during the middle of the day. And having a wireless standard that is now optimized for current consumption is very important, and it provides an enabler so that we in the future can have very efficient wireless connections, and can rather spend, you could say, the power on providing you could say superior audiology for the end users. Besides being low power and specifically developed originally also with the intent of supporting hearing aids, it is great to see that we now have a standard that supports two channels for supporting two receivers. It has been a challenge for non-LE audio hearables in the past to actually provide a good, you could say, consumer experience in terms of power balancing when you only have one connection in classic Bluetooth. You will easily end up in a situation where one of your devices run out of power before the other. Having the two channels, which we call two isochronous channels, for supporting the two receivers is a major step forward in terms of providing a good user experience. Then of course Ken talked about the audio codec, and here again optimized for power, but we also get great quality and low bandwidth, which also again means we optimize for power. We don't have to send as much as we would in a classic Bluetooth setup. So again, a very big improvement from what we have seen in the past from the Bluetooth standard in terms of supporting hearing aid use cases. One thing that Ken talked a little bit about, but what I also like to emphasize here, is the inbuilt in the standard. We also have advanced control functionality for supporting the changing between use cases. As we all know, then hearing aids per se do not offer a sort of very advanced user interface unless you use an app, which means that you only have a button to change between programs and stuff like that. And inbuilt in the standard, we actually have great functionality that easily supports switching between a phone call, listening to music, or just using the hearing aids with sort of very swift approaches through, for example, a mobile phone app. And finally, the broadcast functionality, which will enable enhanced digital services. Today, broadcast is handled through loop systems, and this new functionality actually gives us an enabler to move just like you had with TVs in the past, going from analog TV to digital TV. We will see the same possibilities come into light here, where broadcast goes from being a pure one channel, one content approach to being something where we provide digital, you could say, quality, but also offers opportunities for additional services on top of the voice or the sound streaming itself. If you then go to the next slide. So just summing it up, so here's the use cases that are the significant ones for hearing aid users is the streaming of media. Either you could say it's music, it's from a TV, from a PC, from car. It's also then one-way, two-way communication with a mobile device. And here again, they are offering the opportunity for a more optimized power consumption and also a more optimized, you could say, control functionality between the use cases. And then finally, the broadcast offering these digital services and you could say digital signal quality that will help the hearing aid user in situations where there are you could say a setup which could be a cinema, it could be ticket office, things like that, where you can actually get both a superior quality of your signal, but also in enhanced services. So with this standard, which is now coming, it enables an interoperable ecosystem that is truly fit for the use of hearing aids and includes control functions for switching between the use cases. So looking forward to see that now hitting products and also consumer devices, so we get a setup where we can easily enjoy media or have communication wirelessly across many devices and not only constrained to a few consumer devices out there. And that was actually what I wanted to cover. I know I speak on behalf of all the EHIMA members when saying that we have been waiting eagerly for this to happen, and now finally, after a lot of hard work put into defining a standard covering all the different cases, getting it out there.
All right. Also to you, Finn. Thank you very, very much for your insights. I will stay at this slide with the use cases, and now we have some time left for the question. And the first one is actually pretty interesting. It could affect most of the use cases of Stefan Geist. What is the maximum range of audio sharing? Maybe this is a question for Ken.
Sure. I think that in general with LE Audio, we're not adding any features that fundamentally change the range of Bluetooth. Now, the range of Bluetooth is variable. It can be, depending on the use case, anything from, as we say, less than a meter to more than a kilometer. But when it comes to audio, it generally is shorter range. Now, it also depends on the use case. So, for instance, if I'm going to do personal sharing from my handset, I would expect the same kind of audio range that you probably see today, not dramatically different. You might see a little bit of improvement, but I'm not sure there's a dramatic distance setting. But in the audio sharing case, when you're talking about public venues and you're talking about a broadcaster that is installed in a location, then it is different. So they will be, handsets typically don't transmit at the maximum power that they can transmit because they have other things that they're trying to do. But if you have a mains powered transmitter, for instance, installed in a theater, it can be transmitting at the highest allowed power. It can also have very good antennas optimized for this kind of use case. So I think it's pretty easy to imagine that, for instance, a single theater could be covered by a single Bluetooth transmitter, if that helps answer the question.
Yeah, and I guess we can also say that we have done some tests in EHIMA in actual theaters to see how sort of we were able to sort of cover a theater with one single transmitter without, we were not even sending at maximum power, and we seem to it seems to be functioning quite well. So I'm sure that the most important thing is that the line of sight is not obstructed by concrete pillars and all sorts of stuff. And as long as you have that, which you typically have in theaters, then you're good to go, I would say. And then, as you say, Ken, with the increasing the power, output power to maximum, and with antenna design, then I'm sure we can cover up to very large venues.
As you are mentioning the tests, I will change the chronology of the question a little bit. And as John asked, as if you were able to speak to economic operators like cinemas, transport operators, conference centers, etc., if there are already economic operators with proof of concept pilots to showcase. If it is, if the advantages of the new system is already recognized by customers.
I can certainly speak to what I'm aware of, and I'm not sure about the end, when you say the end customers as being the venues themselves. I'm not sure how aware they are yet that this kind of next generation alternative is coming. I do know the hearing industry itself, whether it's for instance, the loop infrastructure vendors and hearing instrument vendors are well aware of this, and I believe are kind of excited about the possibilities here and the underlying economics and performance behind it. I think there might have even been a statement recently from a number of the hearing instrument manufacturers and the hearing loop manufacturers kind of making a statement as to their expectations as kind of the timing associated with this. I don't think this kind of transition happens overnight. I think hearing loops will be in deployment and use for quite some time, but they may be augmented with this option, and then and over time may just transition to it. So I'm not sure if Stefan or Finn have other comments.
No, I definitely Ken, I would agree to that. So we expect to see loop systems being in use for many years to come. It's quite expensive to install a loop system, and of course that needs to be supported going forward. But I think as we progress and we start to develop the enhanced services, then we will see these systems augment the loop systems going forward, and maybe also make a sort of introduction in places where there are no loop systems today. Then this offers a possibility to go for these enhanced services, and maybe also eventually, potentially at lower cost.
Thanks for these answers. We have some questions regarding the devices. One is if the new standard and the devices needs special hardware like antennas, and are we sure, or do you know anything about that, if the smartphone developer are planning to include this new standard in their devices?
I'll speak from a standards perspective that we did design the standard itself such that existing products could be upgradable to be able to support this capability. Now, whether that or not that's can happen is a lot of variabilities in there, and ultimately it's up to the product strategy from the vendor, some of the underlying technology they may have chosen as far as, for instance, Bluetooth chipset, and whether those are upgradable or not. So there's technically it's possible, but I'm not sure how many would, especially any older systems, would be upgradable in the field to support the capability. The one other comment I'll make on the other one about as far as smartphone support, obviously we cannot speak for any of the major handset vendors as to what their plans are for supporting this, but we are very excited about that. We do believe this is going to happen. There's many motivations to want to do this. I think just for instance, just the beyond hearing aid usage, the audio sharing capabilities is something that people are excited about in general as a whole new use case for audio and Bluetooth in all these devices. And I think also the handset manufacturers would also like to see things like a Bluetooth-based assistive listening things going that direction. It's much more straightforward for them to engineer to that kind of approach rather than support for hearing loops and telecoils. So I think there's a lot of, and having a standardized way to support hearing aids is a very important for them too. It makes their life a lot easier to be able to not only deliver compelling products, but meet governmental regulations and so forth. So I think the motivations are all there for the handset community and the underlying operating systems behind them to support this. So we're very, very confident in that.
Yeah, and I think we can also say, Ken, that the participation in writing up the standard from handset providers has been sort of super supportive and very involved, and just as from the hearing aid community. So in that sense, I would say we expect everybody to jump on the wagon sooner or later.
And I do see a related. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ken.
Well, I was going to say, I do see a related question having to do with the kind of current proprietary implementations within the different ecosystems. For instance, MFI for Apple iOS devices and ASHA for Google and Android. I think in both cases, we would expect everything to ultimately shift to the LE Audio standard. I think, for instance, if you look at ASHA and MFI, I think they are viewed as kind of interim solutions in order before the standard was available, and that you'd expect things to shift towards the standard approach relatively quickly, as I would assume. Yeah,
that's it's of course hard to comment on what the sort of the individual implementation plans are in the different companies, but I'm sure we're going to see now that the standard is available, more and more people supporting that standard, and then of course over time our hope is that there's only one standard out there. So but let's see where we end up.
Perfect, thanks a lot. You already answered now the question for MFI and ASHA, so there is one more question left. Does the lower power consumption mean that in-ear aids could be built smaller than they now are, and maybe with a rechargeable battery?
Yeah, I guess that one goes for me. I wouldn't rule it out. That's all I can say. So you could say some of the radio parts, you could say, in terms of antenna and these kind of things are similar between the different standards, because you're operating in the same frequency band. However, with these optimizations that we are seeing, then for sure we will start to see, you could say, developments going in a direction where things that were not possible previously actually becomes possible. So let's see where we end up. I wouldn't rule it out.
Okay, here we are. So thank you very much for your interest, your attention, and your great questions to the experts. If there are any further questions afterwards, please do not hesitate to contact us. We will compile the answers to all your questions, including those you will send us afterwards in a Q&A document, and will make it available to you together with the recording and the presentation of today. So all I have to say now is to wish you a great World Hearing Day tomorrow, and well, get your hearing tested from time to time. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thanks, Daniel.
Bye. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.